Okay, everyone. Just getting all of this set up here. All right, it's good to see everyone here. And feel free to check in the chat box, like where you're tuning in from and how you're feeling, coming to the space, what you need, perhaps. Might be really good. And welcome to those of you who are new to the space. This is Medicine Buddha. No, this is Chenrezig. Wrong day. I have a practice coming out soon. I have more practices than I have years to live, I think, to share with people. But one of the practices that's kind of been going in my head is there's this really one lineage of Kagyu school that I trained in. There's a lineage called, well, I won't get too much into it, but it's called Shangpa Kagyu. And they have this well, there's one, I'll just say they have a tendency of really simplifying things in the lineage, but also a tradition of taking multiple deities and putting them into one practice. And I've been really like thinking about that lately, to do like a sadhana practice where you're just moving in and out of different deities. But we'll get to that at some point. But I am feeling the evolution from Chenrezig to Mahakala. That's a very strong pathway that's opening, but it'll be a little while before I teach that. Because as you know, the Mahakalas are emanations of Chenrezig, which is so profound, I think. I'm not teaching a lot of wrathful practices right now either, but that will change sooner than later, I feel. I love a good wrathful practice. Maybe you don't, and that's fine. So yeah, I'm Lama Rod. I use he, him pronouns for those of you who are new to me. And I am living and teaching on the ancestral lands of the Cherokee Creek and Muskogee people here in Atlanta. And so much of the teaching, what I've been learning over the past couple of years since I've been back on this land, is how much the land, the earth, is a part of our awakening and liberation. And I think that's something that has kept the development of Tibetan Buddhists really stagnated in this country and really siloed into, probably particularly convert American communities, which are mostly whites, middle class, kind of communities. When you're so disconnected from the land and the earth and the history and the consciousness of the earth itself, you're so disconnected from the fruition, of liberatory practice. And I think this is why Tantra will not see its full potential in white dominated communities in this country. I think the future of Tantra is going to be very Black, brown, indigenous, very femme, very queer, very messy, I think, very emotional. Because we're talking about getting free, we're not talking about getting comfortable, right? And I think this goes all the way back to Chenrezig. Chenrezig, you know, again, ontological story of Chenrezig was meditating in their two-arm form, and then realized, and then just kind of got really disappointed because they weren't really freeing beings in the rate they thought they should as bodhisattvas in the 10th level, right? Just about to awaken to into full Buddhahood. And then that shock really, of course, overwhelmed Chenrezig. Chenrezig melted into 1,000 pieces. Well, actually more. You know, some of the texts say just like dust sometimes. This is the point for many of us that we need to actually let go and just do. You need to actually fall apart at some point, right? Because you need to actually dissolve this fixation around who you think you are and what you think you're doing, right? And I say this as someone who's done this multiple times. You know, one time wasn't enough for me. I have a little stick of incense here, so take the blessing into your own space. At what point do you let yourself fall apart, right? And at what point do you trust the beings around you, like Chenrezig trusted Amitabha, Amitabha. In the same way, Chenrezig trusted Amitabha to come and reassemble them, right? Like, who are we trusting to come and reassemble us? There's no ultimate freedom without moving through this utter collapse, you know? And it's scary, right? It's terrifying, it's scary, it's all the above, and it's even more than what you think it is, right? Like, it's that plus. But this is what we commit to. Like, this is why we stay at comfort, because once we hit that threshold of real transformation, we have to lose shit, you know? And if you're lucky, you will lose everything. Like, if your karma, if you have excellent merit, you will lose everything, right? And of course, you know, that sounds like a contradiction, right? Because only in the loss of everything will you begin to understand the nature of everything, that you haven't lost anything, actually, that you just actually disrupted your fixation to phenomena, right? And when you start gathering back together again, you're only gathering the things that are needed for the work of liberation, for the labor itself. You know, when I was coming up in activist communities, you know, my primary activist community, Haley House, and the Catholic Worker, I was so, to be honest, I was so overwhelmed by how intense people were. People were so fucking intense, you know, and I was just like, it can't be this serious, right? Because before I joined the community and joined the movement, right, I was like, oh, activism and organizing is fun. It can be fun. It can be like community building, you know, and that's what, you know, I belonged to communities of activists and it felt good. And then when I came to Haley House, It was like, no, we're not trying to feel good here. We're trying to get free. Like, we're actually naming violence and harm, and we're strategizing against it. And everything's on the table. So I was meeting people who were just like, yeah, people who spent years in prison for civil disobedience, for actions, right? People who were living under the radar, like people who were like, you would ask people their names, it would be like, who are you? Why do you need to know my name? And I'm like, well, where do you live? Why do you need to know where I live? Right? It was like, and we were also really convinced that we were like being bugged by the FBI in the house as well. And like after a time, like once you really get serious about the work, you're like, oh, this is real. Like this is life or death. Like this is real harm, violence, systematic, collective harm happening, which has been happening for many centuries, for thousands of years, for many people. And we have to get serious about disrupting this, right? And the question you would get is, what are you willing to offer? What are you willing to lose to get free, to get other people free? Are you going to dedicate your life to the project of liberation, right? And those were of course, those were the elders that I was with. And it would be like, no, I just want to have fun. I just want to hang out. I don't want to go to jail. Like, I don't want to go to prison, right? And then over time, what began to happen, first of all, my practice began to awaken and to develop. And then you begin to understand, right? Oh, this life, the illusion of this life is what I'm so addicted to. Like there's an illusion here, right? And I'm taking it real seriously, but not seriously in the way that is feeding the work of liberation, but serious in a way that I'm trying to like make this comfortable, and I'm trying to hide in the folds of this phenomenal reality. And there's nowhere to hide. No one's actually safe. Safety is an illusion, like everything else. Like I will die, and you will die. Everyone we love will die. There's no inherent permanence anywhere. And that's heartbreaking, right? And it becomes even much more of a heartbreak when we don't choose to lean further into this and to say, you know what? Yes, like I'm so attached to permanence and the illusion of permanence. But if I can lean really deep into this practice, into this work, I begin to touch into the illusion, the essence of the phenomenal world. And that's where my real freedom actually begins to be experienced, right? That's how I begin to live in the world, not being consumed by the world, but actually beginning to view the world as a collection of symbols and signs pointing me back to my freedom, to my innate Buddha nature. And that's what began to change my activism, right? Because I began to understand that like this world isn't my home. And my ancestors had always been saying that, in many ways. Oh, the world, this isn't your home, right? And in the Buddhist context, what becomes our home is emptiness, is space, is this fundamental energy that pervades everything. Like that's home. That's what I'm trying to get back to. And that's what I'm trying to get others back to. And that's what Chenrezig was trying to get, and still is trying to get all beings back to, right? And that's based upon, one of the doorways into the essence is love. There are several, right? But love, this fundamental wish that every being is free and safe and happy and resourced, to get to that attitude and to have that attitude for every single being, including the ones who hurt us. That's the goal. And once that expansive attitude awakens for all beings, then the nature of the phenomenal world begins to reveal itself, because you're not pushing things away anymore. Because the driving energy of love is not just this wish, but it's also this tremendous allowance, this letting the world be, right? To let the world be, to accept all phenomena as it is, right? Which is also the root of Shane practice and shamatha practice, or calm abiding practice in the Tibetan tradition, right? Is to actually allow phenomena to be. And to go further and to accept the arising of phenomena. Right? When I say accept, I don't mean condoning or celebrating, but at some point you have to say, yes, this is happening. And when we allow the phenomenal world to reveal itself to us, then there is, yes, a falling apart, a heartbreak that we have to move into, because it doesn't line up with what we want the world to be. Right? Because we're all living these different realities. As you can obviously, you can see if you live in America, right now, all of us are living, in North America. If you're living in the United States, like, you're very familiar with different realities that people are living in, right? We're living in a different reality too. We're not special, Like, we've carved out our own kind of version of reality, and we plant ourselves in it, because that's how we protect ourselves. But more specifically, that's how our ego is protecting itself. Our sense of self is bolstered and supported through the narratives that it creates, right? That affirms the sense of autonomous self, right? And we have to bust that bubble, right? And that's where the heartbreak is. That's where the falling apart is. To bust that bubble and say, you know what, the world is as it is, first and foremost. And then to move through the transformative, I would say even revolutionary process of actually beginning to tune in, to expand into the world as it is, and say, okay, this is it. This is what's happening. This is what has happened. This may be what will happen in the future. Till our hearts break, till our souls fall apart. And that may take many years to move through. But if we continue practicing, if we continue calling in our resources, right? For those of you in the 7 Homecomings course, when we call our homecomings in the same way Chenrezig, I believe, called Amitabha. I think Chenrezig just called for help. Amitabha arrived, right? We call in our help and the beings who love us to begin to tend to our brokenness. And then we begin to re-arise as beings who are intimately, deeply, and wisely holding space for the world as it is. And then we transition from reactivity to responsiveness. Like, once you accept the world, the phenomenal world as it is, then I have the capacity to choose how I want to change something, right? That's where my activism shifted into responsiveness. not into just reactivity. The reactivity is based upon trying to avoid the discomfort of having to deal with the truth of reality, because the phenomenal world and your experiences in your life are much more intense than you allow yourself to open to. Right? On purpose, because there are very sophisticated ways in which we've created, and our minds create and our bodies create these ways of protecting ourselves against just the intense truth of what's really happening. Right? And so I made a commitment early in my practice. When I started practicing, I was like, I came into practice very clearly understanding that I was tired of all this bullshit. I was done with suffering. I was done with violence. I was done with, I was just done with the ambiguity. I was done with feeling like hell. And I was like, there has to be something else. And also, many of you haven't gotten to that place yet. You can't free yourself from something that you haven't learned to renounce. You can't escape the drama because part of you actually still really likes the drama. We can't escape from the ways in which these systems create privilege and certain identities because we actually really like the privilege. We like the privilege because we're terrified of not having that privilege in the world and what that means. Right? So much of how anti-Blackness works in the world is that people realize how Black people have been treated. Unconsciously, there's a conscious way in which we know. You have this intuition of how Black people have been rendered in the world, and it's like, oh, I definitely don't want to be Black, right? Or we can talk about any other identity location, identity locations around gender, like being transgender and non-binary and gender non-conforming and everything. It's like the fear, that gets the fear, right? The fear that we feel, when we are in a relationship, when we see people who are making choices to be free, and how those choices remind us of the choices that we're not making for ourselves, or how we equate confusion with being unsafe. And we react to that experience of being unsafe, creating harm for others, right? There has to be, for all of us, there has to be this experience where this fear, this delusion, the hate, the aversion that arises from all of this has to be confronted and tended to. Because if it's not, then there will be no liberation anytime soon. That's all of our work to do, right? And I mention this because any practice in this tradition will only be as strong as your intention to get free from suffering, right? If your intention is just to make a home in suffering, just to kind of get through life, that's where the practice will meet you and leave you, right? If your intention is to transcend these dualities, transcend, the binary back into embodying, realizing the emptiness, the space of your inherent being, your inherent rooted nature, then that's where the practice will take you. It's going to take you beyond all binaries, especially the binary of discomfort and comfort, and pleasure and displeasure, right? Joy and despair. It's going to take you not just beyond the binaries, but it's going to take you even beyond what you consider to be pleasure and joy. It's going to take you even beyond that, right? Beyond, beyond, as the Gate Mantra says, right? Beyond, beyond. So this is the fundamental question that we start our practice with. Am I just trying to get comfortable, or am I actually trying to get free? Right? Am I trying to follow the path of Chenrezig when Chenrezig just fell apart? It was like, fuck. And I've had these experiences over and over again. I've had moments where I literally have felt like I can't be more miserable than this, you know? And I never let those experiences consume me. And I said, and I will rise. Like Maya Angelou said in her poem, I rise. How do you keep falling down again and just keep getting back up? Because if you're not willing to do that, this isn't the path for you then. Right? I can't even count the times in this past couple of years. It's really definitely since the pandemic where my ass has been laid flat out for days. And I'm like, I'm fucking Lama Raj. Like, how am I not able to get through this in a couple seconds? You know? Sometimes I've gotten on screens with you all in different capacities, and it has been the hardest thing for me to do, to practice, when all I want to do is just like continue falling apart. But I keep moving on, I keep pushing through. I keep allowing myself to be loved and cared for by the countless beings around me who are trying to love me. Right? Because I think, being here in this country, many countries, as a country that is a product of colonialism, a colonialist, settlist culture, is that colonialism, disrupts indigenous belief thought patterns that says that we are not alone. And colonialism says you are alone. You are separate. There's no other world that's trying to liberate you. And if you try to think about the other world, then we're going to create a religious paradigm, a construct that just re-emphasizes colonialist logics, which were taught to my ancestors in slavery. This path, Tantra, is meaning to disrupt those logics that are actually trying to keep us bound in the carceral state, both a physical carceral state and the mental, emotional carceral state of being bound and held and surveilled and policed. And this is what love is. Like, I know there's a lot of really great books about love, but like, I'm not interested in those books unless they're talking about freedom, right? Unless they're talking about the hard, hard work and the heartbreak of actual love. And I'm not saying that none of this is supposed to feel, because there are things that do feel great. But I'm saying that if you go all the way, if you shoot for freedom, then all this other stuff is going to happen, right? If you just set your mind, your intention on the ultimate goal of enlightenment, and all the joy, the everything happens. But if you're just going for the joy, then you won't get to the end, because joy is limiting and enlightenment is boundless. So can you risk everything to get everything? Right? Because, really, I'm just becoming my elders now. You know, all the elders that used to scare me to death. And I used to be like, oh my God, stop talking to me about organizing freedom. I just want to have fun, right? I'm becoming that person, but I'm also still having a lot of fun, right? Because I haven't given up fun, I haven't given up joy, but now I'm able to understand that all this can happen at the same time, right? I can work really hard to get free, and I can also have these experiences of spaciousness and openness and connectivity and community and all of that, right? But my goal is always enlightenment, right? I don't wake up and say, may I be happy today. No, I wake up and say, may I get free today. Like, that's my only prayer now, is freedom. And these are really important conversations to have, because I know many of you are stuck. I get it, and y'all sending me messages that I don't ever respond to, which I understand, I get that. But I'm hearing, I'm listening, and I'm praying always. But so many people feel stuck, right? And I'm not here to set you free either. Like, you should let that go as well. I'm not gonna free you. I'm sorry. You know, I'm showing you how to get free. That's the best that I can do. Right? You have to choose freedom, because you have to choose the work to get free. And when we do it together, guess what that's called? That's called Sangha, right? It's not Sangha if everyone isn't doing this. That's called a get together, that's called a little silent sitting activity on Wednesday nights. For some of us, that's called the country club Dharma. I'm not going to go back to radical Dharma days, but that was one of our teachings in radical Dharma, country club Dharma. you know? Right. You need to be choosing freedom now, you know, and the world will begin to ask you for labor that you will believe you do not have the capacity to offer, but you do, especially if you ask for help. And everything that I teach, everything that I do is all about gathering the resources we need to do the labor of liberation and getting free. right? We have to stop listening to these really beautiful stories of, about Tara, Chenrezig, or, whomever, Milarepa, whomever that we study, and actually start taking the story as seriously, or even Jesus, someone who died as a result of the work to get people free, who was executed by the state, by the Romans, right? I'm doing this. I'm doing this everywhere because it's important. This is, I'm building the energy for the next book, because the next book will hit really hard. It will hit you. It will be like a brick dropping on your head, right? For those of you who read it, so a couple of people read it. Eric, I know you read it, and it's changed your life. Still recovering. But again, and we're going to get to practice now, but I am someone who's learned, I wasn't born like this, but I've learned to allow myself to be held by my ancestors. And my ancestors are full of intense, profound wisdom. My ancestors have survived. Anything, any, I don't watch slavery movies anymore because they really don't tell the truth. And my ancestors have taught me and shown me what survival looks like, but they've taught me what joy looks like. And they taught me what prayer looks like. And they taught me what holding on feels like and looks like. So when I talk, you're really just listening to my ancestors speak through me as well. My ancestors held on for hundreds of years so that I could come into this world to do this, right? Like Harriet Tubman walked and ran off that plantation to offer us a vision of what freedom can look like, right? The abolitionists of the past organized, put their lives at risk, actually, to show us what abolishing systems of violence looks like. Like, we have the examples, we have the energies, we have these beings touching the world, waiting to be relied on. Like, if you could only feel the level of resources that we have, the countless beings of light who are here to move us through this period, right? That completely outshine, like the darker energies, right? But we have to start believing that. We have to start believing in the power of Chenrezig and all the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, who are just one expression of countless expressions of liberatory beings here to help us. But you have to want to be free. You have to get sick and tired of being sick and tired, as Fannie Lou Hamer taught us. And you have to be willing to ask for help. You put all of that together, then you're ready for the work. So let's begin. And let's begin by first actually bringing attention to our bodies, allowing our bodies to arrive in the spaces that we're practicing in, to connect to the seat, or the floor that we're standing on, or whatever we may be lying down. Allow your body to be in connection with another thing. And we ask ourselves, right? Or actually, rather, we ask our bodies, what does it need right now? What does your body need to do practice right now? And that should always be one of the first things that we do, is we ask our bodies what it needs. We're never trying to free ourselves from our bodies, but rather we're trying to free our bodies from our misunderstanding, our misconceptions of it, to allow the body to be as it is, instead of imposing a narrative on our bodies that actually starts creating harm for our bodies. And listening to your body and then offering your body what it needs right now. And when you offer your body what it needs, turn your attention to our intention for practice. And there's really only one intention now, which is to get free, to experience liberation for myself in order to help all beings get free. And what does freedom mean for you? And it's okay if it's overwhelming, completely outside of your experience. Notice it and name it. Because that's where you're going to start. As Pema Chodron says, start where you is, not where you ate. Actually, I said that. Pema Chodron didn't say that. Start where you is, not where you ate. And the way that we begin to work with aspirations of freedom is just continuing to think about it. What does it mean to be free? What does it mean to be enlightened or awakened? Where do I suffer? And what would it be to not suffer in the ways that I have been suffering? And so you can really just like think about something, analyze it, process it, right? Just get really deep in it, and all of the images, all the narratives, everything, the discursive thinking, everything that comes up, get really deep in it. Right? What is freedom? What does it mean? What does it feel like? Who's free? Who isn't free? And then when you get real frustrated with it, I want you to relax And imagine that you're actually offering all of this thinking, this processing into the nature of emptiness, into emptiness itself. Like you let it go and allow your awareness to expand back into space. Because you're letting emptiness and space begin to help you integrate this work around freedom as an intention. So another way to put this is that you're recalibrating your mind to point back to itself. Because Milarepa taught, when mind gazes upon mind, then we begin to experience the ultimate nature. I want us to do it one more time, right? And 3 times is always the best when we're doing really intensive contemplations like this. Or, we'll just do it twice here. So calling back into consciousness this thinking around what freedom is, what does it feel like, right? How do I get free? In what direction do I go? Just really just thinking about all these issues and getting really deep into thinking and the processing. Do this for a couple of moments. All right, taking a break, offering this back into emptiness. Relaxing the mind, expanding awareness into space. Holding all phenomena, not reacting. And of course, this is the groundwork for acceptance. Just holding everything, not reacting, but just noticing, holding, expanding. And in this space that opens up, yes, you begin to feel. Right? You begin to notice the energies of emotions, maybe physically, maybe mentally, either or both together, maybe. And these experiences, everything is just energy that we have a tendency to label. But in this moment, can we just say, energy is just energy right now? All phenomena is an expression of energy, of luminosity. And so slowly, I invite you to shift your attention down to the heart center. And we're beginning to breathe in and out of the heart center. So as we're inhaling into the heart center, noticing, feeling the rise and fall of the diaphragm and the upper chest. And as we inhale into the heart center, I invite you just to say to yourself as you inhale, I deserve to be free. So inhaling, thinking or saying, I deserve to be free. I deserve to be free. And just releasing the out breath for now. So breathing in, thinking or saying, I deserve to be free. And as you inhale, thinking that phrase, I deserve to be free, as you inhale, I invite you to imagine that all the beings who love you, who guide you, are also making the same wish for you to be free. And that wish for your freedom feels like energy that begins to awaken around you, maybe in the form of light, white light, or warmth, or anything that feels appropriate to you in this moment. But beginning to feel the energy or relate to the energy of this profound wish for you to be free, awakening around you. And as you inhale, you're inhaling this energy along with your own desire to be free right into the heart center. So I am inhaling all of the wishes for my freedom into my heart center along with my wish to be free. I deserve to be free. I'm letting that begin to awaken the heart center. And it's okay to feel a little ungrounded. That's what happens when we awaken energy within the energy body and the physical body. And slowly You can imagine that the heart center begins to, as it awakens, begins to glow. So our heart center begins to radiate a soft white light, or it warms up perhaps, or maybe you feel more expansion. And it's okay if you don't sense or feel any of this. But just to know that we're awakening the heart center and beginning to hold space for that awakening of the heart center. And slowly within our heart centers, within the center of this awakening energy, we begin to imagine Chenrezig appearing in our heart centers. And again, you don't have to necessarily visualize Chenrezig, but just having faith or trust that Chenrezig is awakening in our heart centers. So once we have a strong conviction that Chenrezig is appearing in our heart centers, I invite you now to let go of the intentional breathing in and out of the heart center right now. And then turn your attention back to contemplation. And this time, I want you to contemplate how hard liberation is, and freedom, and the work towards enlightenment is. The difficulty, why it's so hard, all the obstacles. Even get specific, what's keeping me from really choosing to be free and to practice towards liberation? Just awakening all of these thoughts and doubts and obstacles. What's keeping me from choosing freedom? So a few more moments. And now I invite you to shift your attention back to your heart center, back to Chenrezig in the heart center. Imagining that Chenrezig in your heart center begins to glow and illuminate like the sun rising in your heart, and that Chenrezig begins to radiate and illuminate your whole body. And this illumination becomes so intense that you and all your doubts about liberation begin to dissolve. Everything, the world around you, your body, your thoughts and doubts, all begin to dissolve in the light of Chenrezig's radiance. And for a few moments, allowing your awareness to sit, to rest within this radiant light. And then slowly, in this light, you begin to reform as Chenrezig themselves. You become Chenrezig. And again, the most important part of this practice is to simply think, I am Chenrezig. I am this bodhisattva of limitless love and care. I am already free. I am already awakened. There is a capacity in me to hold space for all phenomena. And my body is translucent and fluid, filled with light. And the world around me arises again. And it is the Pure Land, the realm of Medicine Buddha. I'm sorry, the realm of Chenrezig. So all phenomena is also translucent and fluid and empty in nature. There's no inherent permanence. No there. And you are residing as Chenrezig in this energetic plane where where you know that everything is an expression of emptiness itself. Just for a few moments, just resting our awareness within this emptiness and spaciousness as Chenrezig in this realm that is only an expression of Chenrezig's consciousness. So from this space, I will begin. You can chant along in your space. Chenrezig's mantra, Chenrezig Om Mani Padme Hum, which again translates as behold the jewel and the lotus. It's just union, sacred, ultimate, profound union, remembering of the inherent wholeness of everything. And everything is inherently whole, because everything is an expression of emptiness. Om Mani Padme Hum. And just resting, opening, allowing in this space as we are tended to and taken care of by Chenrezig's profound awakened consciousness. Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 Om Mani Padme Om Mani Padme Om Mani Padme Om Mani Padme Take a deep breath, breathing through the nose, exhaling through the mouth, releasing, opening, relaxing. Just relaxing a little deeper into you and your expression as Chenrezig. Imagining that the world is being blessed by the consciousness of Chenrezig. That deep love and care begins to pervade everyone, all conscious beings, including the earth and all the elements, both the material world and within the energy, unseen world. That we offer the profound blessings of Chenrezig out to all beings, wishing, as Chenrezig, that all beings may be freed through our practice and dedication to get free. And again, our bodies and Chenrezig begins to radiate with intense light. And all the world around us, including our bodies, begins to dissolve into white light. And slowly that white light begins to dissolve into emptiness itself. And our awareness is released to mingle and abide with an emptiness itself. And slowly we begin to re-arise back into our own bodies, slowly beginning to notice the weight of our bodies making contact with the seat, allowing the seat to hold us and ground us. Maybe slowly becoming aware of physical sensations, maybe even our breathing. And maybe even beginning to take deep cleansing breaths, breathing through the nose, out of the mouth, and just releasing what feels stuck or rigid. Beginning to invite movement, slow, gentle movement back into the body. Beginning to move and just loosen up energy, getting energy that's settled, moving and fluid again. And remembering to take some water, drink some water, and hydrate really well after our session. So coming back into the space. And so as we transition out of our practice, our session today, just some suggestions about integrating practice. First, take some time to continue moving, walking, asana, whatever feels appropriate, getting lots of fluid, resting if you can. And in terms of practice, really to continue to integrate this practice or continue working with this aspect of Chenrezig, it's just allowing ourselves to have some time. And this is more of a formal practice. This is maybe not on the go practice, but it's when we set aside some time and just allowing ourselves to really explore doubts around freedom and liberation work, and then slowly offering these doubts into emptiness, and maybe doing that at least 3 times, and this is really good for any contemplation work that you're doing in practice. It helps to integrate the energy of these contemplations into the mind. And then coming back to Chenrezig, beginning to think about Chenrezig and going through this process of just really experiencing Chenrezig or believing Chenrezig is in the body, particularly in the heart center. And just resting there for as long as you want, that really the grounded sense that Chenrezig is really present for us, for being in my heart center. And slowly becoming Chenrezig, re-arising as Chenrezig in any way that feels appropriate. And then just chanting, using the chant, the mantra, imagining yourself as Chenrezig and letting this energy, the frequency, the attunement to Chenrezig, right, and the power of the mantra actually begin to attune you really towards or back to this state of freedom. So letting Chenrezig do this work for you, right, which is what wisdom deities in Tantric Buddhism are here to do, is to actually open the door back to enlightenment for us, to remembering that we're already free, and that they can actually become a kind of like vehicle that we can kind of come into while they actually point us and take us back into emptiness. Okay. That was good for me. Hope it was good for you and all of that. Thank you so much for your practice. We'll be back next month. You'll get those dates ASAP. And join me tomorrow night for Medicine Buddha, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard, as well, where we continue our work with Medicine Buddha, which may or may not be that different than what we do with Chenrezig. So thank you all so much. And I will see you soon. Thank you all.